Welcome to the intersection of technology, cybersecurity, and society. Welcome to ITSP Magazine. You're listening to a new Securing Bridges podcast. You're about to join Alyssa Miller as she sits down with senior and executive security leaders to share stories of success and failure while working across business teams. It's time to build and secure the bridge to the business. Knowledge is power, now more than ever.
All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Securing Bridges. Here we go once again. It has been a wild ride 2 weeks ago now. Because last week, we had to take the week off. I was exhausted. RSA was it was busy place. But hey, we had a great episode 13 with Jen Easterly. And so it warranted being played twice. But we're back. I'm back in Studio A for Alyssa, I guess. I don't know. I just make this stuff up as I go along. I'm really bad at it. But no, so happy to be back with you. Episode 14 of Securing Bridges. So we've been at this a little while. Hope you're all loving it as much as I am, because I know it has been a blast. And we've had some amazing guests. And once again, this week's no exception. We've got another amazing guest. I'm super excited, especially because she was kind enough to fill in at the last minute. We had a little bit of a scheduling snafu, and I couldn't be more excited or blessed or lucky or fortunate or all the wonderfully amazing things I can say. We've got Larisa Breton here with us. Hey!
Hello, Alyssa. How are you?
I'm doing excellent. How are you?
I am good, but may I say I'm outside of Detroit right now, and it is 100 degrees. It is hotter than homemade CN.
Ooh, you guys have like the weather we had yesterday.
For sure.
It was
for sure. Thank you so much for having me on. Your scheduling snafu was my good luck. I'm so grateful.
It worked out great. So I'm not complaining in the least. So let's kick it off the way we always do here on Securing Bridges. I would love to have you introduce yourself to our audience for those that don't know you, and just tell us a little bit about yourself, what it is you do, how you got here, those kinds of things.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I'm Larisa Breton. I am a consultant. I own a small consultancy, a boutique consultancy that is cybersecurity focused. I come more or less out of the defense community. I pivoted fully into cyber about 10 years ago. And I spent 5 years being in program management for a pilot DoD program that actually survived the infancy and got into the big DoD budget. And I'm currently working a little bit more in energy right now. And I actually have some kind of current examples. Hopefully we'll conversate about. In a bit. And it's interesting that you kind of just prompted me to think about something from 10 years ago, because I think that that's something that might come into what we talk about a little bit later too. So I'm in leadership. I'm sort of on the quiet side of things and the quiet people side of things, which is awesome. But I have to, before I do anything else, Alyssa, I have to thank you. You have taken a really proactive, principled, moral stance about recent things in our community. You've been using your platform for good, not evil, and I I just want to say for myself, but for a lot of other people on the quiet side of things, we appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. I mean, it's good to know. It's good to know, the things that I'm trying to advocate for are, well placed, I guess, that the people that I'm trying to help support are feeling it. For those of our listeners that don't know, I don't know that we're going to get real deep into it here today. It is kind of current events, but there was a situation with a conference over this past weekend in Cleveland, and it did not go well. They made some probably ill-advised decisions in the lead up and how they did some things within their conference. And I think there were, a lot of people speaking out against that. And calling out some really disappointing behaviors, to say the least. My voice, I guess, just happens to be a little louder in the Twitter sphere. I don't know, but I mean, I think some good's coming from it, so I appreciate that.
No, I do too, and I appreciate that you sort of reached into your own resources to make things right for some of the conference attendees. For folks that aren't tuned in on this or whatever, like the B-sides are smaller conferences. They're very elite, but at the same time, they're a great entry point for people who are younger and newer in the business. And so, someone like me that's been around the track a few times, I've got skin a mile thick. There's not a lot that bothers me anymore because I've fought those fights. I've plowed those rows with my chin. But we want to make sure that we're setting the right frame for folks that are coming into the business. And I see no reason why their entry to the business or their experiences should be as tough as mine were or as yours were, Alyssa.
Yeah. Well,
why should it be like that?
And that's just it. And then, I mean, consistent to the theme of the show, trying to build that bridge. B-sides events are often the ones that are pointed to as, for people like this is probably a good first conference to go to because they're usually smaller, they're community focused, they're community based. If you want to speak at a conference, they're generally, it's a little easier just because they are more community based and the attendees tend to be, more from the community than, some of the big conferences that draw in, tens of thousands of people from everywhere. And then, makes it a little bit higher bar to get in as a speaker. So, I mean, and I think that's probably the biggest key that comes out of it is recognizing that, all right, really, if you're going to run a conference like this, you are serving a local community. And indeed, the Cleveland community in this case is one that's burgeoning and I know trying to really build and grow. There's a few conferences now in Cleveland. And, it's unfortunate that an event like this kind of, as the organizer himself, who has since stepped down, mentioned, it eroded some trust. And so I think.
And I just think it's really important that you and other people have spoken out and stepped out about it because it helps to rebuild the trust. And it helps to show people that the trust really, even though maybe part of it has been broken or something went wrong, that the community is resilient and the trust exists and we can continue to basket weave, the things we need to do to stay together as a community. So again, I just, I thought that was great.
Well, I appreciate it.
And Sunset Hurricanes.
So current events aside, those current events, we can look at other current events.
Okay.
I definitely don't want to. I figure we might end up landing there a little bit.
We'll leave it behind.
I want to hear a little bit more if you're up to it. I'd love to dig in a little bit more to what you're doing at Full Circle and, some of the focus you mentioned, having overcome kind of that first barrier into really connecting as a vendor, whatnot for the DoD. I mean, that's a tough nut to crack right there.
There are a lot of gates and wickets to get through, barriers to entry. And I think this all goes to like kind of a thing I want to build up during our conversation about building trust and building community and building relationships. And I sort of wanted to sort of kick off with something. I promised you and Sean I would try not to make dirty jokes. I will try.
Oh, we love dirty jokes. Come on.
All right. But I thought about it and I thought, can we start off by talking about Kinky Boots?
I love that show.
No, yes. The show, but actually like the boots, Kinky Boots.
Oh,
like cool,
okay.
Kinky
yes,
boots.
Please. I have a few pair.
Me too. I know you do. And so I thought, let's like talk about that for a second because like I've seen, you've posted some like outrageously awesome boots on your Twitter feed. And the other night I was literally like the night before we got in touch about this opportunity, I actually thought about you because I was looking at Zulily.com and they had these Sorel boots that were just off the chain. And I was like, oh my God, I should text her a picture of these. And I was like, no, don't do it. But, that's something that you and I both like, right? And I know that about you. And I thought that this might be an interesting way to get into sort of a conversation about something that I think is integral and critical to building bridges with the business. to building bridges between the tech folks in the business, or the business and other parts of the business, or GRC and the money making part of the business, right? Because typically in GRC we get viewed as like the department of no.
Hey, welcome aboard!
Hop on the no train. We're going nowhere with nothing.
Welcome to the club.
Yeah, exactly. So if our jobs was the club, Alyssa, we would be like the 9-foot bouncer, not letting anyone into the club. Right?
And that's how we get perceived, right? I mean, that's happened.
Right.
It's no secret. I mean, I remember back my developer days, I always made the joke that like the information security utopia would be an impenetrable room of servers with zero connections to anything on the outside world. Like, completely secure,
right,
and completely useless, right? And that's where a lot of those attitudes have come from. So yeah, it's a really good point.
Yeah, absolutely. I think back when we were starting, I don't think we could have. I mean, okay. In 1997, I had the opportunity to hear Nicholas Negroponte, tell us a lot of things about what the future was going to look like at a conference I went to with Wired. And it turns out that a lot of those things happened, but I always go back to those notes about once a year to see what has happened. And, I don't think one thing that people really thought was coming was the way that everything has turned into edge.
Yeah.
So to your point, exactly. But like so we talked a second about pivoting into cybersecurity. So, 10 years ago when I was working more in national security, and, people can affirm 10, 15 years ago when we were talking about national security, counterterrorism, certain forms of early thoughts about cybersecurity, the big thought there was about relationship building. And that it was really, really important to build up peer relationships with other countries, peer relationships with intelligence agencies, peer relationships with just about anybody you could build a peer relationship with, because there wasn't good interoperability.
Yeah.
In systems or in systems of systems, including, the security community. And so what the security community, at the time that the security community and the tip the spear community started to integrate with each other in Homeland Security, was realize that the thing that we have to do, that's the most important thing we can do, is talk to each other, right? And so when I think about, and I started thinking about, the bridges that we build and the things that we have to build and maintain, right? Because you can't just build a bridge, you have to paint it, you have to sand it and support it and make sure that the water underneath isn't like making the pylons go away and stuff, right?
Certainly important stuff, yeah.
Just that. So I was really thinking today about, when we talk about kind of talking about relationships, and I thought, well, let's start with you and me, because we know each other, and I know you're into cool boots, and I'm into cool boots, and like we have a few other things that we have in common. And like, if I needed to call you out of the blue sky, right, I might break the ice with talking about something that we share in common. We're both really, you're both into fitness. I've got some fitness goals, which didn't achieve during the pandemic, but that's a whole separate conversation.
We've all been on that roller coaster,
right?
Yeah.
Somebody just said to me, you came out of COVID either a chunk, a hunk, or a drunk, and I came out a chunk. So, anyway. But so, when it comes to relationship building, we all get the beginning of the story, right? We all get, you need to build relationships, and okay, how? But really what's equally important is like, how do we maintain those relationships, right? How do we not just build trust, but what does that really mean? How do we demonstrate trust and exercise trust over time in the business? And I think in a lot of ways, it comes to this kind of ability to have not what I would call like small talk, but the ability to talk about non-controversial things or things that you and I have in common or that we have in common in our community, in order to establish a conversation.
Right.
And then, that conversation can continue, and hopefully what I'm building to here, hopefully what you build to in these relationships is that you've built up enough trust so that when something's not going right, when something has gone wrong, when something unexpected has occurred, which, let's face it, is our life and security, right? It's a stochastic environment, which kind of sucks some days when you have other plans. But, what you want basically in your relationships is to have kind of like some muscle memory.
Yeah.
And you want to be able to build that relationship and build trust up so that when the worst occurs, you can kind of rely on the relationship to get you through what are going to be, and I know I'm talking to the choir right here, but what are going to be really challenging conversations about existential decision making for your business. And in order, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, go finish your thought.
No, please go ahead. I was just.
I was going to say that this, this is actually a really good point, because we talk a lot, I think, in the security space, kind of the front edge of this, where we've gotten past the department of no, and we're getting better. There's been a lot of talk about empathy, which is,
right.
Kind of being able to understand, identify with your audience, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like what you highlighted is actually important too. And it goes beyond just the empathetic piece. And it's like, let's actually find the common ground that we have that we can start building from.
Exactly.
And I think in terms of, in DevOps, we talk about the concept of shared responsibility, where we make everybody responsible for the same set of goals, which is making sure our software is secure, making sure our software gets delivered efficiently, making sure that it's stable when it hits production. Those are the traditional dev, security, and operations goals, all wrapped into one that all three of us now focus on. And so I think what you've just described is a great way to start building that culture, which is forget about the technical, those operational swim lanes or any of that and drawing that together, but just how are we common in the sense of the business as a whole?
Exactly. And how are we common as human beings too? Because we're all human, whatever frightening percentage of cybersecurity problems that turn out to be human error from whatever department, right? We got to get through that. But I think, what you just said about, the swim lanes, the engineering, the technical tools and stuff like that, like Alyssa, in my space in the business, we talk a lot about resilience, right? And, you can think about resilience in the sort of tech and engineering stack. You can think about it in BCDR and continuity of operations but then for all of it, then there's also this need to have resilience in your relationships so that, let's say the worst were to occur and, you had a sort of a post 9/11 kind of situation that they had in the financial markets where they had to get the market running the next day, and they did it all on spit and duct tape and personal relationships.
Yeah.
And I think that in the security business, we can get into our swim lanes and get comfortable there. And I would just like to point out that I can't remember who told me this, but I always like to repeat it. They're not silos. They are cylinders of excellence.
Cylinders of excellence. That's a new one now. Centers.
It's a gummy thing. But we get into our cylinders of excellence. And I think too, in the technical part of the world that we're in, it serves you and you get promoted and rewarded if you have great focus and you're able to focus in on what you're doing, and maybe you're not all that extrovert and it's okay, and I know I'm a complete anomaly in our business because I'm a massive extrovert, right? For me, this comes naturally. In fact, I function very poorly if isolated from other humans, but for other people where there's discomfort in that, and that's kind of why I wanted to talk about the kinky boots, is everybody has something in common with everybody else, no matter what it is. And, and I'm kind of aiming this remark at anybody who's newer to the business that's watching this podcast, because you're very smart and you want to learn from Alyssa Miller, who's amazing and one of the most technically astute people out there.
What is going on? My cheeks are turning bright red here.
Base flattery. No, I'm just kidding. No, it's true words. And no, so if you're a little bit younger to the business, here's the thing. It can feel very tough emotionally sometimes to say, well, how do you do that? I know I'm supposed to network, but what does that really mean? I'm supposed to build relationships. Like how? I'm in the network operations center 29 hours a day, right? Yeah. I think one of the things with that is that, like, you have to deal a little bit with that discomfort, and it entails actually phone calls. We get very sunk into the Slack. We get very sunk into texting each other. And I perceive in a newer generation in our business that there's discomfort with speaking with people. And when I pulse on that, the answer that I usually get is, well, what if I get thrown a curveball in the conversation? What if something really unexpected happens in the conversation? And yes, Frank Barton, the department of what are you trying to accomplish and how can we make it work for everybody? Yeah. So, when the unexpected occurs, roll with it. We work in security. Our whole lives are responding to things that are unexpected. And so my thinking there is just let the phone be your friend. Pick up the phone, talk to people, get them used to hearing your voice, make a joke about it. Like, oh yeah, I'm going to be the mosquito buzzing around your ear this week or whatever. And start to build the relationships in any way that you can on a regular basis. And I'm sorry, go ahead. I'm talking.
No, you're fine. This is good. I mean, we talk a lot about the human element, but again, we seem to talk about the human element in terms of threats, right?
Right.
You hear all that, your people are your weakest link, your biggest threat, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, maybe there's some truth in that, but the reality is your people are also your most powerful tool, right? I mean, we can throw technology at these problems. Hell, I said it in a talk 2 years ago. Like, we keep creating technological answers to human problems. And I think there comes that point where, yes, you want technology to help to try to address those human problems. But a lot of times, the solution is the human side of it.
Exactly. Alyssa, that's totally right. I mean, when you say, we want technology that works for the people, not the other way around. I mean, at this point in the game, cannot always be true. But so if we're humans that are all working on the technology together, we need to have some fundamental idea of how we're going to do that. All of the operational knowledge decisions that happen that probably don't get captured as well as they should, those exist in relationships. So I would just say to people, like, let the unexpected happen in your conversations because something cool could pop up. And, build your comfort up with those kinds of things in the same way that you would do a workout and build up some muscle. And, like, when I think about resilience and building trust, again, I just come to, this is a workout. I might not always want to go to the gym. Like, you might not always want to run for 3 hours straight when you're refereeing, but you do. And at the end of the day, you have improved cardio. And at the end of the day, with making these conversations happen, suddenly you have a cadre of people that you can trust. You don't always have to like each other. But there are people in my business who I dislike, like, intensely, that I would put my life in their hands.
Yeah.
And I hope vice versa.
We would hope. And, so I think related to this, Phil brought up an interesting point here, that, for some people, talking on the phone isn't even the right thing, right? I mean, for some people, that's not the right solution. Not everybody communicates. Not everybody's, in that same mode. But I think even in that situation, then it's finding with those people, what is the right way to communicate?
Exactly.
If that's somebody who's not good with hopping on a phone call, maybe IM is the thing. Maybe it's, some other, more asynchronous conversation point, but I think still we can tie it to the same idea that you're trying, part of building that relationship is just being able to understand even how do you effectively communicate. And we can roll that into everything in security and in business in general. I mean, think about even at the, an executive level, walking and going in front of the board, walking into that room and presenting to them is maybe not something you're the most comfortable with, but it might not be the thing they're most comfortable with either. So figure out how you can connect with them in a way that's meaningful to them and to you.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where I think, back to the boots again, I didn't think we were going to turn, thigh boots into the conversation today, but I'm loving it because it's working. It's finding that authenticity.
Right.
And I think that's the thing. It creates a little bit of vulnerability because to be authentic, you're exposing quite a bit about yourself that maybe you wouldn't traditionally.
Mm-hmm.
People know me for, you mentioned the boots. People see me tweet about wearing pink sparkly boots on stage at RSA or whatever. Or, I've got the spiky skull boots that I've worn a few times too. I mean, and people recognize that. And those are things that I like wearing that because it's a lot of fun, right? I mean, it's a lot of fun to do it. That's authentically who I am. But now that gives you a way to connect. So when I think about those communications with people outside my security team, it's the same thing. Like, what's making them tick? What is it? What are these board members? If I want to go back to that example, where do they come from? What job what's their day job? Because their day job may not be just being on a board. Right. And some of them, that is what they do, just professional board members. But even then, they worked somewhere before. They were in a leadership role somewhere. What was it?
Right. They're humans. They're humans, and they probably have some really interesting stuff to share. And I sort of, at this point, I sort of practice what I would call like radical honesty. What you see right now is, if I were presenting to the executive director at the state energy entity I'm consulting with right now, this is what she'd see and what she'd get. This is what you see and what you get if you work for my company, if you're interning with me. Leadership, peer relationships, this is kind of what you get. And I hope that is a way to build trust up with everyone around me.
So how does that then play in? I mean, thinking back to, again, what you're doing within the business and you're connecting with DOD. I mean, can you speak specifically? And I realize some of that might get into shady areas you can't talk about. So, but as far as what you can, I mean, what are kind of those shared experiences that you find when you're dealing with people in that space? And does it change any? Sure.
Well, I would just say, I think that in a DoD context or any military or federal agency context, I think one thing that everyone shares is that we're all a little bit overworked and we don't make as much money as the private sector. So that's one way, that we can identify with each other right away. But honestly, just the opportunity to connect with people. I've been in front of high leadership where they've said, "How are you today?" And I said, "I'm as nervous as a long-tailed cat in a room full of rocking chairs."
I have no idea what that means, but it sounds.
I'm one that would, again, it comes easily for me. So I'm not trying to preach something that I think you should be comfortable with just because I said so. I mean, obviously it's my comfort space and others, but like, I'll make jokes, I'll make jokes. I think, one thing that we all share in security is a shared sense of mission. On the defense and energy side of things, we call it a moral, like as a contractor, like we call it a moral obligation. So we have a moral obligation that causes me sometimes to want to exceed what I've been scoped out to do, or to maybe, elevate other issues that we say, perhaps we can work on this at some other time, but these are emergent, that kind of stuff. But we all share a sense of duty to securing homeland, securing infrastructure, securing critical infrastructure, securing the power and communications networks that our country depends on. And I think it's not a matter of appealing to someone's sense of duty, but if you scratch the surface on any of us, it's all there. Everyone has it. And I think that's even if people don't like each other to the point where they're like, I hate the way you lick stamps, I hate the way you dunk your tea or whatever, they can still agree on that.
I mean, I've heard of married couples having those kinds of conversations, but wow, running into that in the workplace is kind of weird.
Well, no, but I mean, don't we live our work, Alyssa?
Yeah. I mean,
if you're working in a SOC, don't you spend 100 hours a week there? You do get into these kind of relationships with people. But I mean, to try to answer your question, I mean, I think we have a shared sense of responsibility and usually a big appetite for work that calls to us, and hopefully it calls to each other. But I would give an example if you want.
Yeah. I'd love to hear it.
Okay, so right now I'm working for a large state energy concatenator provider entity. They're subject to the NERC requirements, and they have been implementing a change management regime. They went into it, they planned it, they started implementing it. They know it's going to take more than a year. They knew that there were going to be recoils, I guess I want to say. There would be some resistance, there would be some unexpected things would happen. And they are managing it superbly. And one of the reasons that they're doing that is that they are insisting that people meet, talk to each other, face to face it as much as they can in our crazy, remote environment. And for my part, I've got a peer, and I just said, well, let's talk every morning. Let's not kill each other to death with email volleyball. Let's just, every morning, you're an early bird, I'm an early bird. Great. Let's pick up the phone and talk for 5 minutes. It's not even a stand-up. But just to do that builds up the relationship. And when that happens, from bottom to top, and when people from other departments know each other well enough to be able to pick the phone up or to IM, when they're responding to something before you have to go into official channels, I think that can be, and I'm not advocating going outside of official channels, obviously, but as something becomes emergent, those relationships really, really make a difference.
Well, yeah, I mean, there is something to be said for having that human connection. And it's like I'm sitting here hearing this, and I kind of am thinking in the back of my head, like, wow, I appreciate this, and yet how do I reconcile this with the fact that there's a lot of people out there right now in different organizations that are pushing return to office with no real, what doesn't feel like any real driver behind it or logical explanation for it. And personally, I think it's, as somebody who's worked remotely for the last 10 years of my career, I mean, I can attest to having built and run very powerful teams that, were all 100% remote. But we did have those moments where you were able to get together and actually meet each other, right? You had, their offsite meetings somewhere, or, you had different events or whatever. And I know for some of my consulting teams, it was, we all went to Black Hat and DEF CON together. Okay,
right.
Great. Those were good moments. So, I mean, that bonding piece is there's a balance there, right? I think that ability to connect with people, in that real sense and understand that everybody is a human does pay dividends. But I think where we're getting it wrong with these people or these leaders who are like, we got to get people back in the office. It's that interaction. Having people in the office every day doesn't build what you just described.
Right. It doesn't. It's like you said, it's neither here nor there. Because you can build a great team anywhere remotely. It's not about physical proximity. It's about professional proximity, I guess I would say, more so than the physical.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, honestly, I think it's even beyond that. It's the personal proximity, right? I mean, so, and as personal as anyone's willing to get, but one thing I've always done in every team that I've ever led is, we have weekly team meetings, like I think almost every team does. But I mean, I remember my very first leadership role, like those team meetings were scheduled for an hour. Sometimes they'd go 2.5. And it wasn't because we were being rude and running over and everything. It was because we were all having a really good time, because for a good portion of the time, we weren't talking about business. We were talking about things that were tangentially related to something that was going on in the company, maybe, but it was a lot of personal stuff that we were just and I don't mean personal, like deep, dark, intimate personal stuff necessarily, but people just talking about different things that were on their mind. And what I discovered really early with that was the power that had in drawing a team together. And it's been my focus ever since that, when you have a team meeting, you want to have a set agenda and you want to come in with the things you're going to talk about, because if, you get through that and no one's got anything else to say, all right, you're done, get the hell out of the room or get off the online meeting or whatever, right? Be respectful of people.
Right.
But if you give people the opportunity and they want to just sit and chit chat about, hey, NVIDIA cards are finally becoming, affordable again because all the crypto bros are selling theirs off or whatever, right? I mean, those were the types of conversations we'd have too. And it's great. And a lot of times you did find tangentially how it helped build not just the connection of the team.
But like the camaraderie of the team.
Yeah.
Yeah, or feeling like you have something shared in common besides, meeting this business goal or this security event.
Yeah, and that carries business value, right? I mean, that to me, it's like, okay, you're going to tell me, well, why are you having a 2.5-hour meeting if you're not talking about business? I'm building a powerful team there. We were all getting to know each other. And, through talking about those different things, a lot of us became aware of things we weren't aware of that were going on in the industry.
Yeah.
I remember one. There's one that I remember really, really well way back because it happened during that time frame when I was leading that team. Was this guy? I don't remember where he was. He worked in some municipality, and he was like the only network guy. He quit and walked out, had all the passwords, and he was the only one who had access to the network, and nobody could get in. And there ended up being this whole big fight about, he would only turn over the passwords, I think, to like the mayor or something. It was really this whole thing. And I remember we talked for weeks about that. And why is that cool? Well, because there were a lot of ethical questions that were happening there that did actually directly impact our business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Wow, that's a great way to get to know your folks. Talk through something terrible happening. Yes, absolutely. I wanted to focus for a second on something you shared about, what's going on in the community, what's going on in other businesses, what's going on with people making moves and being here and being there. One of the most powerful things I learned from being part of a non-attributional security community that went on for a number of years was simply to just meet someone new and listen to them. What do you do? And then just to ask one question: how can I help you?
There's the magical question.
How can I assist you? What can I do for you? And it's not self-serving because I'm not looking for anything in return. But when we talk about like getting to know people and like our strong networks, like our close team, but also that edge network that we have, that's really important. To build up trust in that, because usually what they need for help is something like a phone call or an introduction or, hey, would you mind parachuting in on this one issue? But I've seen some actually sort of pernicious national security issues get solved informally because of a strong trust network. So I think just very openly asking, and this goes back to not always knowing what to expect in a conversation, right? Or from a security event, but like, what can I help you with? What are you working on? And just be open to whatever comes out of that, because it might not mean anything right now. It might not mean anything in 2 weeks, but in 2 months, when that other thing happens, Alyssa, at that point, like, you knew about it, you were in on it, you helped, or you can help some more or whatever.
There's that sense of ownership to it, right? I mean, it's, ownership and sponsorship. You kind of all become a part of it. And what that fosters in terms of cooperation, and this is kind of reminding me, I mentioned 2 weeks ago out at RSA, I had the wonderful fortune of sitting down with a wonderful colleague, and I think I dare say friend, Jen Easterly. She was talking about the mission of what CISA is doing right now in trying to build that partnership between the private sector and the public sector. And I mean, everything you're saying speaks so much to that as well. It's that idea of how do we build that trust? If the public and private sector are having conversations, what better way there's going to be those surprises. Someone's going to, CEO of like Goldman Sachs or something is going to say something that's like, oh shit, we never thought of that. Right. Or, someone in Jen's org, Eric Goldstein or whoever's going to say something, and you've got somebody sitting there from maybe National Grid or something's like, oh hey, what, that actually makes a lot of sense and fixes this problem. Who knows? But that's where that, I think, that power that you're speaking to comes from. It's those types of things, because now you're all in that together.
Mm-hmm. And you know what, Alyssa, that just totally reminded me of something else. Because I remember you used to be in audio production, right?
Yeah.
You were kind of show busy, and I was in digital advertising. I was in media, and and I worked in television a tiny little bit. And you and I remember we were at, remember that fun dinner?
Oh God, yeah, we had Ethiopian in Vegas.
Right.
That was the first time I met you. It was awesome.
That was awesome. Remember we talked about it like. You have to be nice to everyone, because the kid on your audio video shoot who's carrying the clipboard that day might be the director or the producer on the next shoot.
Yeah.
And it's not literally the same path in security, but it's not dissimilar. People change jobs, people change roles. Somebody may own just a backwater of a project that suddenly becomes very prominent because of a security event. Yeah. I would hope it would be, I hope that person feels included. I hope that person feels respected. I hope that person feels like an integral part of the community, even if their flavor isn't the flavor of the month. You just never know. And I think it's, to what you just shared, I mean, I think that kind of cross-hatching is super, super important in relationships and conversations.
For sure. And what you just said brings us full circle back to what we were talking about at the very beginning of the show. We were talking about this, issue with this B-Sides conference. And, it's like, we were talking about that in the context of bringing new people in and what they can bring to the table. That, we don't want to be scaring people off. We don't want to be doing things that potentially derail people's progress into this industry, because you never know, who's going to be the next Whit Diffie or, whoever. I mean, I don't know. Sorry, he's fresh in my mind from RSA again 2 weeks ago. But seriously, who you don't know who that person's going to be, who's going to have the next great, huge idea that actually makes a massive difference in our efforts. And so we really have to be focused on, and that's where that whole idea of diversity and all that comes into play. So I love it. Mm-hmm. I feel like we could go on. I'm like a broken record. I swear to God, I say this at the end of every show. I feel like we could go on forever, but I do every week. I love these conversations so much, but we're out of time.
Oh my gosh. Well, this has felt like we were just talking for 30 seconds instead of 45 minutes. And I'm so, so grateful to get the chance to chat with you, Alyssa, because it's been a long time.
It has been. I hope we see each other again soon.
I know. If business, so I'm outside of Detroit, if business is bringing you to Ann Arbor or Detroit, let me know.
I mean, I should have known that. I was in Ann Arbor last year, but
oh my gosh.
But it was COVID, so act like it's not now, but no. So in any event, wow, total tangent. See, this is what happens. But Yeah, I do got to wrap things up, but I can't thank you enough. I was so excited when you popped up. I was like, yes, this would be perfect. When kind of put the call out that things have shifted, and as they do. I mean, that's the fun of doing a live show. It's all unpredictable. You never know. But hopefully, all of you out there watching enjoyed. I hope you enjoy every week. As a reminder, the video recording, if you missed the beginning or whatever, you can tune in on LinkedIn, YouTube, those two I know for sure have the recording available right after. In a few days, this will be converted to podcast format, so you'll be able to listen to it. All the usual suspects, Google, Apple, etc., Spotify, all of them. Just check it out on the ITSP website. Get connected to us. Check out the last 13 episodes if you've missed them, because there have been just awesome shows week after week that I've really enjoyed the conversation. So, Larisa, thank you so much.
Alyssa. You're awesome.
You're awesome. And all of you are awesome. I cannot thank you enough for tuning in. And we'll see you next time here on Securing Bridges. Take care, everybody.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Securing Bridges podcast with Alyssa Miller. If you learned something new and this podcast made you think, then share itspmagazine.com with your friends, family, and colleagues. If you represent a company and wish to associate your brand with our conversations, sponsor one or more of our podcast channels. We hope you will come back for more stories and follow us on our journey. You can always find us at the intersection of technology, cybersecurity, and society.